she's too shy to put her best foot forward. Turned down by the Decca recording company who said, "We don't like their sound and guitar music is on the way out." A failed soldier, farmer, and real estate agent. At 38 years old, he went to work for his father as a handyman. Cut from the high school basketball team, he went home, locked himself in his room, and cried. A teacher told him he was too stupid to learn anything, and he should go into a field where he might succeed by virtue of his pleasant personality. Fired from a newspaper because he lacked imagination and had no original ideas. His fiancée died, he failed in business twice, he had a nervous breakdown, and he was defeated in 8 elections. If you've never failed, you've never lived.
So we've all had some.
Good morning. Pretty inspiring, huh? You think you failed. I remember Michael Jordan, I read something else one time where he said, "I've missed 1,000 shots. I've been handed the ball to take the game-winning shot on 26 occasions that I've missed and blown the game," and had a few more statistics like that. We don't remember Michael Jordan for that, do we? No. We remember him as one of the finest players of basketball ever. I love that video because it reminds us that, as the Ernest Holmes reading says, there are no failures. It's what we do with the failure, what we do with the experience afterwards. And so our talk today is called Setbacks Are Setups. How many people here have experienced a setback? Yeah. Oftentimes, or always actually, if we work with the infinite universe, they're setups for something better. They're setups for something new. Miles Davis once said, the great jazz musician once said, "There are no mistakes in jazz, there are only new lines to riff off of." And I love it. We have a quote from Ernest Holmes that actually kind of echoes that same sort of thing. He said, "Thoughts of lack manifest as limitation. Thoughts of abundance manifest as success and happiness. Failure and success are but two ends of the same stick. All conditions and every circumstance is of the nature of effects and can in no way limit mind unless we take them as a fresh starting point for a creative pattern. The thought that any given condition is a thing of itself tends to make it appear to be a thing of itself. Reverse the thought, and the condition tends to become reversed. In the absolute, nothing depends on anything but ideas." Breathe that in for a minute. And I love that line that all conditions in every circumstance is of the nature of effects. In other words, it's a result of consciousness. And by the way, that does not mean you go around with a big hammer beating yourself up. "Oh my God, how did I create that? What's wrong with me? Da-da-da-da." Okay. You might ask yourself, how did I create that, as just a gentle inquiry? Wonder how I created that. Is there something going on in my consciousness, or was it just something that I needed to learn and wanted to learn? But then he goes on to say, unless we take them as a fresh starting point for a creative pattern. And so something happens, and we get to determine, are we going to start to create based on that? I mess up and fail at a relationship. Am I going to now think of myself as a failure at relationships? I lose a job. Am I going to now think of myself as unemployable? I get a diagnosis. Am I going to now think of myself as sick and on and on and on, hypochondriac, whatever? Are we going to create a fresh starting point? And if we're going to create a fresh starting point in the universe, what's the fresh starting point you want to create? Because you get to create. You get to create the music that goes on past that point. Isn't that fun? You get to create the music that comes out of you from that moment on. And if you're with Miles Davis, you're creating just another work of genius where somebody else thought it was a mistake. And as we've seen from that video, and as we've seen from, I'll talk about a couple of other famous examples, a lot of people think that a lot of people judge things as failure. They're just events. I like to call it, don't get stuck on the snapshot when the movie is still running. You ever seen a movie where they take a still out of the movie? Okay? And a lot of times we get caught on the still taken out of the movie and put that in front of our vision, and we think that's it. The movie is still running. Catch up with it. Play with it. There's more to go. As you saw, that came from the Prosperity Plus 2 video with Mary Mana Morrissey, and she herself has had a couple of major setbacks. And as she said, one of them, she heard a voice say, this is a dark chapter in your life, but it's not the whole book. And so we go through dark chapters in our lives. Anybody go through a dark chapter? Yeah. But it's not the whole book. The book keeps on going. And you get to author the book. You get to continue to write the book and play with the book. So failure only happens in the mind. We judge a thing as a failure or just an experience that we can be grateful for later. Because I bet you many of you who have experienced those setbacks, down the road you look back at that, what you determined was a setback and the most horrible thing that happened to you in your life, and 5 years later you're sitting there going, whoopee, I'm so glad that happened. Or maybe not like whoopee, but I wouldn't wish that on my worst enemy, but I have grown and become a much better person because of that. Yes? Yeah. So when we start to have that attitude, when we start to remain open and just say, okay, so this is what happened, doesn't look good right now, but it's also not the end of the story. We get to be open to continue to play and play and play and realize that we're playing with a universe that is in a conspiracy for our good. And as long as we don't shut her down, we're still playing with the universe that is in a conspiracy for our good. And it does not matter the last thing you just did. What matters is the next thing and the right now thing. Setbacks happen. And they can hurt. It's okay to feel hurt. It's okay to feel the feelings. You don't have to sit there and do what I like to call a spiritual bypass. Oh, that didn't really hurt. Sure, he or she left me, and sure, I lost my job, but oh, I'm okay. I'm fine. Okay? Don't do that. If it hurts, it hurts. It's okay to say it hurts. You don't have to stay stuck there. You've noticed that sometimes it can hurt, and you can still keep on going, yes, it hurts, and I'm going to still continue to build a better life. I'm still going to continue to go and do something better. I may take a little vacation. I might take a little time out. I may run off to Germany for 3 weeks and float down a river and drink wine, but, you know. Or something, I'm going to treat myself. You know, when my wife and I broke up, my cousin offered me his beach house up on the Oregon coast for 3 weeks. I had a wonderful 3 weeks up in the beach house. Yes, I hurt. Yes, I cried. Yes, I processed stuff. But I got to walk on the beach every day, and just experience that. Lots of good seafood right down in Lincoln City and stuff like that. So we can continue on. It's what we do with our setbacks that determines our eventual outcome. I'm a little bit of a basketball fan, and I happen to like a team called the San Antonio Spurs because they used to have a guy that had the same name that I do. I let him use my name. Because I had it first. But he's a little bigger than I am and plays basketball a little better. And so I fell in love with the San Antonio Spurs back when a guy named David Robinson was their center. And so I've followed them ever since. I really like that new kid they hired named Tim Duncan, who's now 38 years old. They won the NBA championship just last week. The year before, playing against the same team, they had it in hand. They were 13 points up with like a minute and some seconds to go, and they blew the game and lost the championship. Now that's enough to dishearten most people. A lot of people would say, oh God, what's wrong with us? We're losers. They would take the team, tear it apart, and bring in new folks. They kept the same team together. They kept the same 3 guys at the court together. They kept the same coach. The owner didn't fire him and say, what's wrong with you guys? They kept it all together, and they went back and said, okay, we're going to work harder. We're going to make sure that this never happens again. So they came out of this season with the best record in the NBA. They broke their own franchise record for the number of straight wins that they did, and they won, and they beat the same team for the championship in 5 games. And they didn't just beat them, they dominated them. Okay? So that's what you do with a setback, is you say, okay, great, yes, that happened. What can I do to make myself get better? You saw up there about a group that I think it was Capitol Records, I can't remember who that was, but said we don't like their sound and guitar music's on the way out. Beatles? Yeah. In February of 1967, the Beatles released 2 singles. It was a kind of a double A-side singles called Strawberry Fields and Penny Lane. How many remember those songs? Okay? They bombed. They were the first Beatles songs in 4 years that did not become the #1 songs in the charts. And the press all said, they're over, they're done, they're washed up. I love it because Paul McCartney said that he read those and he was sitting there rubbing his hands together and goes, just wait. Okay? Because that was February of 1967. On June 1st, 1967, they released an album called Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. Rolling Stone magazine still says it's the best, the #1 album ever released. Sold 30 million copies. The album stayed at #1 in the US for 15 weeks and in Great Britain for 22 weeks. Okay, that's like months, okay? I mean, that's like forever in recording history. That's what you do with setbacks. You sit there and go, how can I make that better? And you change your consciousness. So the way that we turn setbacks into set-ups for greater good, first of all, as Ernest Holmes says, we reverse our thoughts of failure. We're conditioned to judge ourselves based on outer circumstances, outer results. We're conditioned to judge it. This is good, this is bad. This is success, this is failure. We have a whole societal idea of what success is in our culture, right? And so if we're not matching that, whatever that is, and each of us has it, by the way, in our own family. You know, my mother wanted me to be a doctor, so I'm a failure. Happy to be so. I wanted to be a priest. I applied to the seminary when I was in Catholic grade school at 13 years of age. I didn't get in. A failure. Or am I? So we have our ideas of what success is. We need to, as Ernest Holmes says, clear up our mental atmosphere. If you've been walking around with "I failed" somewhere in your mind, and it might be current and it might be something from a long time ago. If we're walking around with that clouding our mental atmosphere, we need to clear it out. We need to be open to the full flow of the universe. It's like, do we have a clear day in our mind, or do we have a lot of clouds floating across us, you know, blocking out the sunlight that wants to come down and share with us? So we want to clear out our mental atmosphere. We need to remember that whatever happened just is an event. It means nothing about you. It's just an event. It doesn't define who you are. Because who you are is an expression of the infinite. And God is not a failure. One of my teachers used to say, if it ain't true of God, it ain't true of you. So God ain't a failure, right? Thank you. At least my idea of God is not that God's a failure. So we clear out our mental atmosphere. We remember that there is no failure in the universe. The universe has no judgment. You know, again, it's like water. I used the metaphor of water coming through a spigot the other day. You know, it doesn't care which spigot you spend it through. You know, which faucet you turn on in your house. It doesn't sit there and go, "You haven't used me for so long. I'm not going to come out of this faucet." The last time you ran me out of this faucet was to wipe out that burned pan that you destroyed. I don't know if I want to come out anymore. You're a failure as a cook. Water doesn't do that, does it? At least not my house. Does it do it in your house? No, okay, good. The universe doesn't have a judgment. It doesn't see success or failure. It just sees event, 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 event. Boom, boom, something happening, event. Use that universe. The universe has no judgment. It just keeps producing the results that we direct into it. It just produces the results that we ask it to. The universe can only say one thing to us, and that thing is yes. After we've cleaned out our atmosphere, we refocus. We remember what was our original intention. If I've had a failed relationship, what was my original intention? Wasn't it to experience love? Okay, maybe that particular process with that particular person didn't work, but is my intention still doable? Can I still experience love? If I've lost a job, is my intention to be able to give my gifts in this planet and get well paid for them, is that still doable? In fact, many people find when they lose jobs that they can do it better. They're freed up to sit there and go, okay, I don't have to work for this corporation anymore. I had a friend of mine who worked for Sony Corporation, building TV stations. And they'd bring him in. He designed part of a TV station when they were going to get it up in all the electronics and everything. And eventually they were doing cutbacks. They were downsizing, and he got downsized out of that job. And it was a well-paying job. And I remember he and his wife, and they were good religious scientists. They were very powerful people. So they spent 4 weeks, and they admitted they had a little fear about this process because all of a sudden this large income was gone. And he had a layoff and severance package, but it was, they knew it was coming to an end. But they were also standing in prayer and power and knowing that they could, that the universe totally supported them. These are people, when they built their house, they built a beautiful house up in Mukilteo, Washington, right on the water, right near the water. And when they laid the foundation, they wrote in the foundation, this house is built on God's love. And then built the house on top of that. I'm told we have something written in the structure of this building, I believe it is, with all the love and affirmations of the people at the time. I love that kind of consciousness. So he sat there and he went, I know this is going to work out. 4 weeks later, Sony calls him up and rehires him as a consultant. Pays him more money. No benefits, but they pay him more money, quite a bit more money, by the way. They send him off. His job required him to be away for a while to go design these TV stations in different cities around the country and even around the world. And he said, okay, part of my deal is I want you to fly my wife in every couple of weeks so that we can have some time together. Okay, we'll do that. And he came out of it making more money, being able to spend time with his wife on their dime, not his. And he also was able to, in his old job, he came in and he designed part of a station and left. And he said it was frustrating because he liked to design whole stations. And so with his new job, he was in charge of designing the whole station. He got to stay there from start to finish. Okay? That's what a setback turning into a setup can look like. We sit there and we stand in faith. We sit there and say, what is the intention? What was it I really wanted to manifest? The method that we might have used might not have worked out. The process we've used might not have worked out. But the infinite presence behind that wants to manifest something is still at work. It's still saying yes. It's still saying yes to our good. Are we still saying yes to our good is the only question. And then finally, get support. Most everybody who's been successful that I know or have ever read of has had a support network. We have this thing in the United States where we got to be the Lone Ranger. We got to do it ourselves, all by myself. I can do it. And religious sciences tends to be sometimes a little thing. It's like, well, I created this mess. I got to get myself out of this mess. Get support. Get help. We have wonderful practitioners and ministers here who would love to support you. Last week, I brought this up here. This is our prayer box. Wonderful, beautiful prayer box on it. It's open to receive prayers. Do you know how many prayers we got last week in this box between two services? 0. There are practitioners and ministers who would love to pray for you, to support you in your highest and greatest good. You don't have to, by the way, be in a state of failure or disease or whatever to use the prayer box. It's open to anybody. If your life is going well and you want it to go even more weller, put a prayer in. I want more wellerness in my life. It lives back there on the table. That's our new practitioner table back there. I was stunned to find out that when I asked the board about the practitioner prayer box, not a single board member knew that we had a practitioner prayer box. And probably many of you don't, and I won't, I'm not going to chastise you, but we do. Use it. It's a powerful, powerful method, powerful, powerful process. Prayer is a powerful process. And I know many of you know that, and some of you have experienced it, many of you have experienced it, but you don't have to also just do it all by yourself. Sometimes we're stuck. Sometimes we're hitting a blind spot, and a blind spot literally is, I can't see it. And so we need to get some support and help from a practitioner, from a minister, from a prayer support, prayer request card. Get help, get support. Don't do it all by yourself. The Wright brothers, when they were working on the plane, and we remember them for flying, what we forget about the fact is they crashed a whole lot of equipment prior to flying. Okay? Thomas Edison crashed a whole lot of stuff before he finally got the light bulb. And the Wright brothers would say to each other when one got discouraged, the other one would say, I can see us flying. I can see us flying. Just remember that, brother. I can see us flying. Get somebody who can see you flying in your life. And that's what a practitioner is great at. Practitioners have, as a friend of mine once said, been described as a person who will listen with great compassion to your story and not believe a word of it. They will love you with your story, and they won't believe it. They'll believe the truth about you. And so they will see past and through your story. So get some support. So this week, what I want to invite you to do is take a look at what it is that you've called failure in your life. It might be something that's relatively recent. It might be something way, way back. Take a look at it and reevaluate it. Perhaps something you've judged as failure in somebody else's life. Perhaps you've judged your kids or your parents as failures. Just notice what it is, and then start to reverse the thought. Things may have turned out a way you don't like, and that's okay to say, that's not how I would prefer to have had it turn out. It's okay to acknowledge that. We all have preferences, right? I prefer chocolate ice cream to strawberry ice cream. My personal preference. But you're not wrong for liking strawberry ice cream better. Right? Maybe a little bit, but not too much. We have preferences. We have the way things we would like to have them turn out. And it's okay to acknowledge the preferences, but if we start to cement them into and put them in a box that says failure, and hold ourselves or anyone else, because anyone else we're holding as failures, by the way, if we're all one, who are we really holding as a failure? Yeah. So notice where you have the judgments on yourself and on anybody else. And take it off of there. Reverse your thinking. Be willing to change your thinking about it, reverse it, clear your mental atmosphere. The universe is still going. The universe is still in operation. Even if that person has passed on out of this particular physical life, the universe and their existence is still in operation. Remember what your overall intention was. It's one of the most powerful things when we can take what it is that we failed at and step back and say, what did I really intend? What was my core intention? Usually it's something like love or success or health or wholeness, caring. Usually it's a wonderful intention. Can I still manifest that intention? The answer is yes, you still can. Perhaps I need to get better educated. Perhaps I need to learn more effective ways of being in relationship, or more effective ways of being at work, or find work that suits me more, or find a relationship that suits me more. Perhaps I need to take better care of my physical body. But find out what is the intention that you want, and be clear on the intention, and continue with that intention and say, I am going for that, and I'm not stopping until I get it. Thomas Edison tried, 10,000 methods to make a light bulb work. Colonel Sanders tried to sell his chicken recipe to, I think it was 900 and some odd people, stores, vendors, before he finally got one who said yes. We all know how that worked out. The Beatles didn't just stop that record company and say, we don't like your sound, and say, well, we'll just crawl back to Liverpool and be, whatever it was they were going to be otherwise. So we keep on going, we keep on going, we keep on going. Setbacks are part of the process. And setbacks are information to help us to get better. And then finally, get support. If you don't have a support network in your life, find a support network. Like I said, we have fabulous practitioners and ministers here who are willing to help you and support you in that. They're available after the service. One will be up here at the chairs, and one will be back there at the practitioner table if you want to actually talk to them. The prayer request box will be back there, and they're available during the week. I don't know if you know it or not, but how many people here have ever had a full-on practitioner session, the approximately 1 hour or so? Okay? And was it worthwhile for you? Was it beneficial and powerful? Yeah. Okay. So I don't know if you know that, but our practitioners and our ministers are trained in spiritual counseling. They're trained to help you find those blind spots and get through them. And trust me, it's like one of those, you can take a year to get through it, or you can take about an hour to get through it. I prefer the hour. Sometimes it's a little messy. I usually have Kleenex available for my clients when they come to see me. Oftentimes they need it. But in 1 hour, you can work something out that might have taken you a year to work out otherwise. Is that worth your while? Okay. So check in with them, get some support. It's one of the things that we offer in this center. If you don't know that, if you haven't taken advantage of it, I highly encourage you to do so. And we do ask that you pay them a fee, that they set their own fees. But some people say, well, I don't want to pay for somebody just to pray for me. Shouldn't they just pray for me for free? That's called the prayer box, yes. As I think it was Brett Favre, the football player, once said, I play football on Sundays for free. I do. He says, I charge them for the practice and the learning and the experience and all the stuff that I have to do in the week ahead of time to get ready for the game. And so practitioners have taken and dedicated their lives to being practitioners, their education, the process, living that daily, being in shape, being in consciousness all the time, so that they can sit with you and be that. So they charge a fee. Not as much as Brett Favre charges. I don't think, you guys, any of you have multi-million-dollar contracts? Okay, good. Do you do Levi's ads? Levi ads? No, you don't do Levi ads. Okay. Get support. Get support. Have a prayer partner. Have somebody in your life who will listen with compassion to your story and not believe it and see the truth of who you are. And then you also, when you look in the mirror, see the truth of who you are. Because the truth of who you are, in God's mind, is an absolute success. Breathe that in. It doesn't have the list that says, well, you did this and this and this and this, that. It's not Santa Claus, who's naughty, who's nice. It doesn't have that. It's an infinite field of love, pure, absolute love. Every mystic who's ever touched it has had that experience. I invite you to have that experience. I invite you to take what you've determined as setbacks, what you've determined as ways that you would have loved to have things work out, that have not worked out the way that you wanted them to work out. Let go of the way and go for what it is that you really want. Are you good with that? All right, let's pray. So I know that there is one infinite presence, one infinite process, one infinite love, one absolute blast of success that is this universe, that is the infinite good, that is the infinite nature. And it is all there is. There is nothing outside of that. If it is infinite, there is nothing that can be outside of the good. And so we open to that good. We recognize that we are one of that infinite presence. Again, if it's infinite, there's nowhere else for us to go. Not a single detail, not a single iota of our lives, not a single dot of our lives is outside of that infinite presence. All of it is within the infinite love. All of it is within the great music that is being played by the universe, and we get to play along. We are musicians in this dance, in this symphony, in this jazz ensemble and this wonderful expression of life. And so I speak my word that each person here is creating a life that is a work of beautiful art. And just like in painting, where there are things that you go down, you say, oh, I don't want to go that way, and you paint over it. You reverse the thought, you reverse what you've done, and you do something different. We have the ability to create and to recreate and to recreate. We have the ability to say, let there be this, and there is. And the infinite universe does not care what we created before. It is always saying yes in the now moment, yes in the now moment, yes in the now moment. And so we open to that infinite yes that is being spoken to us, and we join in harmony with it and say yes to a higher and greater good than we have ever experienced before. There is nothing to limit us but our own ideas of limitation. And so we clean out those, we clear out that atmosphere, we let go. We stand in that beautiful sunlight, we stand in that beautiful music of the infinite, letting it play through us, letting the song that wants to sing through us be sung fully and clearly. We say yes to that. And for this I'm grateful, for all the beauty, for all the good, for all the love, for all the joy that is manifest by us saying yes, for all the blessings that it brings to our own lives and the lives of all around us and the lives of all in this world. I say yes. I say thank you. And so we release the process of how this happens. We don't have to figure out the how. That's where we get in trouble in the first place. We don't have to figure out the how. We let go of the how. We stand in the intention of being the love, of being the joy, of being the creativity of the universe in expression in our own unique way. We simply allow that to move through us. We let it be. We let it have its way with us. We open to that flow, and we simply say, and so it is. Thank you.
Dismissed with a note that read, wasting her time. She's too shy to put her best foot forward. Turned down by the Decca recording company, who said, we don't like their sound and guitar music is on the way out. A failed soldier, farmer, and real estate agent. At 38 years old, he went to work for his father as a handyman. Cut from the high school basketball team, he went home, locked himself in his room, and cried. A teacher told him he was too stupid to learn anything, and he should go into a field where he might succeed by virtue of his pleasant personality. Fired from a newspaper because he lacked imagination and had no original ideas. His fiancée died, he failed in business twice, he had a nervous breakdown, and he was defeated in 8 elections. If you've never failed, you've never lived.
Our talk title today is Setbacks or Setups. How many of you have ever had a setback in your life? One or two of you haven't. All right, you haven't lived. As those wonderful illustrations went, and the first one, in case you didn't catch it, was Lucille Ball, cut from drama school, basically couldn't make it. As you probably noticed, those people, we know those people because they didn't accept that as the final verdict. Yeah, I have trouble going that thing. We're having a setback with getting the screen up, aren't we? So we have setbacks. The question is, what do we do with them? What are we going to do when we have a setback? Ernest Holmes has a fabulous quote that says, thoughts of lack manifest as limitation. Thoughts of abundance manifest as success and happiness. Failure and success are but two ends of the same stick. All conditions and every circumstance is of the nature of effect and can in no way limit mind unless we take them as a fresh starting point for a creative pattern. The thought that any given condition is a thing of itself tends to make it appear to be a thing of itself. Reverse the thought, and the condition tends to become reversed. In the absolute, nothing depends on anything but ideas. And I love that part that he talks about in there about all conditions in every circumstance is of the nature of effects and can in no way limit the mind unless we take them as a starting point, a fresh starting point for a creative pattern. See, we're creating constantly. We're creating fresh constantly. Hopefully we're creating fresh constantly. Because if we're creating stale constantly, then as the reading said, if we were a failure last year, we're creating the same old thing this year. We're going to be a failure this year. We'll be a failure next year, or at least we'll feel like a failure, judge ourselves as a failure, and show up with those same results. Miles Davis, the great jazz musician, once said that there are no mistakes in jazz. There are only new notes to riff off of. Okay? And so we have what we call setbacks in our lives, things that don't work well, things that don't turn out the way that we wanted them to or the way that other people thought they should have, which is oftentimes the case. Have you noticed? It's oftentimes what other people thought they should have turned out like for you. We can either create off of those, or we can take them as a final sentence and say, that's it, I guess I'm a failure, I guess I'm doomed, I guess whatever. And we start to define ourselves. One of the things I'd like to say is that in movies, have you noticed in movies sometimes for advertising they'll take a still shot out of the movie, one frame out of the movie, and that becomes the poster for the movie or stuff like that. Most of us, or not most of us, many people will take a still out of their life and use it to evaluate the whole life. But the movie is still running. And guess who's creating the movie? We are. Constantly, moment by moment, creating a movie. I go back to you're going to hear me say this a lot just because it's one of my favorite Ernest Holmes quotes. Principle is not bound by precedent. God, the universe infinite, does not care what came before. When you turn on your water faucet at home, it doesn't sit there and go, you haven't used me in months. The last time you used me was to clean out that burned frying pan that you destroyed that roast in. And so I don't think you're a very good cook, so I'm not going to turn on here. Your water faucet doesn't do that, right? Okay, maybe yours does, mine doesn't. Okay? The universe doesn't care what you did the last time you used it. It cares what you're doing with it this time. It's not what it's where we put our attention, and it's where we put our desire, is what starts to manifest. So there's lots of stories of failure. We saw some up there. Failures in the mind. Failure is something that we judge, we evaluate. The universe doesn't have an evaluation of failure. God doesn't sit there. The Old Testament, kind of has some weird stuff in it. So God says, I made a mistake and created people, so I'm going to wipe them all out, excepting for Noah, right? Yeah, but that's really not how the universe works. That's kind of an old personification. The universe doesn't sit there and have a judgment of you. It doesn't say, man, you really messed up. Damien, why couldn't you get that screen up on the first time you pressed the button? Oh my God. David, why didn't you remember to get Kim in as a member the first time around, 2 weeks ago? The universe doesn't sit there and do that, and it turns out to be an even better thing. I'm a basketball fan. One of my favorite teams is a team called the San Antonio Spurs. And I like the San Antonio Spurs. Got a fan there. I like the San Antonio Spurs. I first fell in love with them because they used to have a center named David Robinson. And he was pretty darn good, too, by the way. I was completely oblivious to this fact until one day I was on a phone call and I answered the phone, David Robinson, and the guy said, "Are you the Admiral?" Because that was his nickname. He'd come out of the Navy to play basketball. He said, "Are you the admiral?" I went, "What's the admiral?" You know, and it was explained to me how stupid I was and who he was. And so, anyways, I fell in love with the team. I've been following him ever since. And they just won the NBA championships last week. The year before, they played exactly the same team. And they were almost ready to win. They were in their next to last game. They were up by something like 13 points with a minute and a quarter to go. And they blew the game and lost the championship. Now, that'll kind of dishearten you, won't it? I mean, you're that close, and all of a sudden just a series of bad decisions and misfortunes that were totally uncharacteristic wipes them out. A lot of teams would sit there and fire the coach, get rid of the players, bring in a whole new batch and say, let's start over again. Those guys are old. Those guys are no good. They don't know what they're doing, clearly. But they kept everybody. And what they did was recommit themselves to being better. And so the same group of guys came out and beat the same team, this time in 5 games. And it wasn't just beat. They didn't just squeak by. They trounced them in every single game. That's what we can do with setbacks. You saw up there about that little guitar group that the record company didn't like back in the early 60s and didn't think they were going to make it and go anywhere, right? That same group in February of 1967 released a pair of singles that were, both what they called A-side singles. One was called Penny Lane, the other was called Strawberry Fields Forever. Remember those songs? Yeah, they were failures. They were the first Beatles songs to not become number 1 in 4 years. And the press had a field day with that. They said they're washed up, the bubble is over, they've dried up, they're over with. Paul McCartney said that he was reading the press and he said he was rubbing his hands together going, just wait. Now that's a positive attitude. That was February of 1967. On June 1st of 1967, they released a little album called Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. You heard of that one too, right? Yeah, it's still considered by Rolling Stone magazine the number 1 rock and roll album ever. It sold over 30 million copies and took the Beatles to the next level, took music to the next level. We all have setbacks in our lives. We all have stuff that doesn't work out. The question is, what are we going to do as a result of that? What do you do with the setbacks? Do you let other people's judgment cloud yours? So we don't get caught in them. We don't want to get caught in our setbacks. So how do we start to turn our setbacks into setups for greater good? The first thing is what Ernest Holmes talked about. We reverse the thoughts of failure. Most of us have been conditioned to what success and failure is by somebody else or some other group standards, right? Yes? Okay. You do realize, if you don't, go read the first chapter of the 4 Agreements, where Don Miguel Ruiz talks about oh God, what's the term? It just went right out of my mind. Huh? No, that's the first agreement, but he talks about the conditioning that we receive as a culture prior to that. Domestication, thank you. Domestication. And domestication simply is that we give up our God-given freedom and the magnificence of who we are to fit into a paradigm of what other people think we should fit into. Women should look a certain way, right? And men should make a certain amount of money or look a certain way. Right? No. But you've been conditioned, or many of us have been conditioned that we should be that way. And if we're not, we are failures. Are we really? No. No. Because each of us is a unique expression of the divine. So we start to clear up our mental atmosphere, as the reading said. We take that atmosphere and we start to reverse it. We start to clear it up. I lived up in, as many of you know, in Seattle for a long time, and then there's Lake Washington is like the eastern boundary of Seattle. Humongous, big lake. It's got the longest floating bridge in the world going across it. And it's got two of those basically going across it. And for a long time, it was also really, really polluted. You didn't want to swim in it. And they reversed the pollution in it by cleaning it up. They stopped dumping pollution into it, just like we need to stop dumping pollution into our thought process. And then they cleaned up what was already there so it wouldn't affect it anymore. Our minds are like that lake. Oftentimes we are dumping pollutants into our mind from other sources and from our own past conditioning, and oftentimes then we have what's already there in our minds from our conditioning. And can we clear that up? Yes, we can. It takes work. It did not happen overnight. It did not happen in 1 week. It took a couple of years to clear that lake out. But we can do it. We clear our mental atmosphere. We remember that any setback we have means nothing about us. It doesn't define who you are. It's just an event that occurred to you. It's something that happened in your life. It doesn't define who you are. The second thing we do then is we remember that there is no failure in the universe. This kind of goes with the first one. But we remember that there's no failure in the universe. The universe is sitting there going, not sitting there going, fail. Success. Fail. The universe has no judgment. Thank you for getting that. The universe has no judgment. It just keeps producing the results that we direct into it. It doesn't care. We're the only ones who evaluate. And so take your evaluations, and we can have preferences. We all have preferences. I was talking in the first service that I much prefer chocolate ice cream to strawberry ice cream. Does that make me a good person or a bad person, a successful person or a non-successful person? No. I have preferences, and we have preferences. We'd like those circumstances to turn out the way we wanted them to, right? Okay? But how many of you have had circumstances not turn out the way you wanted them to, that 3 years, 5 years later, you're looking back on it saying, oh, thank God that didn't happen? Yeah. Or even, I wouldn't have wished that on my worst enemy, but I'm a much richer and better person for having had it happen. You know, it's like Kim's, you know, I forgot her to bring her in as a member 2 weeks ago. And we were kind of a little bit, you know, had to talk that through afterwards. And I felt bad about it. But it turns out that, you know, because of the timing and what that means to her, it's more powerful today. And so it's an even better thing. It's a good thing that I forgot to bring, you know, to invite her in as a member a week ago. Trying to get out of that. We have setups, we have stuff that happens that if we allow it to be, it will free us into something better than we've ever experienced before. Thomas Edison was asked halfway through his 10,000 failures in making a light bulb if he had failed enough and was he going to quit. And all he said was, I've discovered 5,000 ways that the light bulb doesn't work. I'm excited about that. See, he wasn't sitting there going success, failure, success, failure. He was going, how does it work? And how doesn't it work? He was on an exploratory process. What if we lived our lives as an exploratory process, as a question, what works? What works better? What works better still? Rather than, am I making it or not making it? Am I succeeding or not succeeding? Then life becomes an exploration, then life becomes play, then life becomes fun to deal with. Take a breath. Breathe that in. What would that kind of a life be like for you? What would that kind of life be like for you? I'd like to play. Can you notice? It's okay, we can talk. So we start to look at life as what's working for me, what works out better, rather than did I fail or did I succeed? So yeah, I figured out how a relationship doesn't work. In my case, I figured it out multiple times how it doesn't work. And each time, by the way, I've learned something and I've created better relationships each time. One of my mentors, Reverend Kathy Ann Lewis, up in Seattle, is on her, I believe, 5th marriage, if I remember right. She says, I'm a master of divorce. This one I don't think is going to end in divorce. I think she's finally got the thing down. Tim's a great guy. And she's also matured into the fact where she can open to a relationship. And so they're co-creating that together. So we learn how not to do it. We learn about work. We keep getting turned down and laid off from jobs, and finally we say, you know what? I never wanted a job in the first place. Who here wants a job? Yeah, I don't either. One little guy over there wants a job. Okay. I used to facilitate something called the Employment Ministry in Seattle, which was a weekly meeting where people who were in work transition would get together, and we go through and explore spiritual principle from that. And what we discovered was nobody wanted a job. Everyone wanted a creative outlet for their individual expression and being paid well for it. How many of you would like a creative outlet and being paid well for it, or having plenty of money to support that creative outlet? Okay? Some of you not, but most of you says yes. And so we begin to learn, what is it that moves me closer and closer to my good? What is it that moves me closer and closer to my heart? See, I was, when I was in ministerial school, I was driving a bunch of ministers to a conference and in a van, and they knew that I was in ministerial school, and one of the guys said, couldn't you find something else to do? If you ask most ministers, one of the things they say is, if you can do anything else but be a minister, go do it. But if you can't, if that's the only thing you can do, then go in it with your whole heart, which is why I'm here. He said, couldn't you find anything else to do? And I said, well, I've tried just about every other career there is, and I failed at them all, and this is the last one I've got left. And everybody in the van laughed. A couple of them said, you're going to make a great minister. Because I'd finally gotten to the point of saying, okay, universe, I give up. I've tried corporate America. I've tried, small business America. I've tried nonprofit organizations. I've tried, business on my own. I've tried everything else, and none of it worked out. Some of it was better and more fun than others. As I was telling somebody, I could either make great money doing jobs I hated, or terrible money doing jobs I loved. And eventually it got down to where I was doing terrible money for jobs I didn't like. And I finally said, you know what? Enough of this. What I really want to do is be in love with God and go share that. That's what I've been doing since I was a kid. And now I get paid decently for it. So as we go through, we learn that the process that we are doing is what doesn't work. And that's the third step that we do, is we start to refocus. We start to identify, what is the intention I really wanted? See, when we move into a relationship, what we really want is to experience God's love. What we're really looking to experience is the love of God. We're looking to give it and receive it, share it, play with it, dance with that love. And many of us have found ways that didn't work out of doing that so well, somewhere in our lives. And sometimes we find ways that do, and we get over the ways that don't work out. But the intention is still there. Can you still give and receive God's love, even if you failed at relationship over and over and over again? Yeah. Can you still express the creativity and receive the abundant, opulent life that you would love to have and deserve to have, even if you've lost job after job after job after job? Yes. Can you have a vital, healthy body even if you've gotten diagnoses that say you can never? Yes. My friend Reverend Barbara, took a country that should have never opened to religious science. I mean, talk about closed minds and closed hearts. We've talked about some of her adventures over there, and I've met some of the practitioners that she has, and talk about a difficult place to, we talk about rednecks here and how difficult it is, and conservative and Christian Redding is, and I laugh because I come from Clarkson, Washington, Lewiston, Idaho, before this, and it's like, you haven't seen a redneck. Or conservative Christians. And yet that country is they will throw you in jail. They have the KGB, or the current version of the KGB, show up at the door, what is it, every couple months or so, that, to sit there and harass them about being there. They can't call themselves a church because it's against state rules. Take a breath. And yet we find a way to succeed. We find a way to succeed. And as long as you keep on saying, yes, I'm willing to refocus, yes, I'm willing to remember what is it that I really want, what is my true intention, and as long as I'm willing to let Spirit move through me to manifest that intention, we are still moving forward, the movie is still running. You probably noticed that Mary Manamorsy was on that video. That's a little section out of the Prosperity Plus 2 class. And she's had a couple major setbacks in her life. And as she said, she heard this voice one time after her second big major setback say to her, it's a dark chapter in your life right now, but it's not the whole book. Many of us have gone through dark chapters, but it's not the whole book. We're continuing to author the book day by day, moment by moment as we go. And as long as we don't get stuck in the last chapter and say that chapter has to repeat over and over again, Bill Murray and Groundhog's Day, we're creating fresh every single day. So we refocus, we remember our intention, we find out a new method. We say, I am willing to have a new method that works. I may not even know what it is. I may not know how to do it. I was just talking with a person after the first service that's been laid off work and was looking for a job. I kind of refocused him from job to creative outlet and being paid well for it. And you should have seen him light up. It's like, yeah, that's what I really want. I just didn't think it was possible. And we don't have to know how. We don't have to know how. We get so stuck up in, I don't know how, therefore, I'm going to just settle for this over here, or I'm going to continue to fail, I'm going to continue to whatever. We turn the how over to the infinite. We keep the intention. We keep the focus of where is it I want to go. And we turn the how over to the infinite. As long as you say, what I really choose to experience is God's love in human form, in relationship. What I choose to experience is the ability to create, the ability to live in abundance and joy, the ability to have a body that is a joy to occupy and go play in on this planet. Whatever it is that your intention is, whatever it is your desire is, the universe knows how to do that. You just stay focused on what you want. And then finally, get support. All those people that she talks about that were in that video up there, all these people had support. The Wright brothers was said, the Wright brothers, we remember them for being the first to fly, right? They destroyed a lot of equipment before that. They crashed a bunch of times. They didn't just one day say, oh, let's just design this, and oh, look, it worked the first time. And nobody else had ever tried it before and crashed a bunch of equipment either. When they get disappointed, when one of them would get down, the other one would say to the other brother, I can see us flying. I can see us flying. The good news was they neither one got down. They didn't both get down at the same time. But they could remember the vision. They could remember the intention. They could remember where they wanted to go and keep that vision fresh. Howard Thurman has a wonderful phrase that says, keep fresh before me my moments of high resolve. And so often they get wound down, they get ground down in the daily grind of stuff. But keep fresh before me my moments of high resolve. So what is the intention? And then I get support from that. We have a wonderful support team here called our practitioners and our ministers. And most of us, many of us, don't take advantage of that, don't use the support that we have. I was in a board meeting the other week, and I mentioned to the board about our prayer box for the ministry of prayer. And they all kind of looked at me blankly and said, what prayer box? They said I was going to move it. They said, we have a prayer box? I was surprised. Do we have any board members in? I expressed my, yes. Hi, Carolyn. And I expressed my surprise dramatically. We have a prayer box. In fact, I brought it up here. This is our brand new one, or new refurbished one. Jim Purnell oiled it and sanded it down, made it look pretty, and I believe Reverend Lolita gave it to us in the first place. And it lives on the table in that back corner there, and it's ready to receive your requests for prayer support. Prayer is a powerful tool. Prayer is a powerful tool. If you've never experienced being supported in prayer, I invite you to experience it. Last week I asked the practitioners how many, when we moved the prayer box and had this wonderful new one mounted, I said, how many prayer requests did we get last week? And they said, none. 0. So I want to invite you, take a breath. I want to invite you to ask for support. There's these wonderful prayer cards, it's buried under the box there. There's these wonderful prayer request cards that on one side says what I want to release, and on the other side says this is what I want to have. Put them in there and let the practitioners pray for you. They're held in absolute confidentiality. That means I won't be Facebooking your prayer requests out there, okay? We won't be putting them on the wall down the corridor. They're held in absolute confidentiality. Practitioners are people who, as one of my teachers said, are trained to listen to your story with great compassion and not believe a word of it. Because each of us has a story. I want you to hear my story. Okay? But our story doesn't liberate us. We need to be liberated from our story. And so I invite you to get support from that. Not only are the practitioners available both up here and back here after the service, but they're available during the week. How many of you have had an individual full-on practitioner session with a practitioner here? Great, a few of you have. And how was that? Powerful. Okay, I got a big thumbs up from Jim back there. Okay? The practitioners are trained to help you to find and eliminate your blind spots. Because a blind spot is where you can't see. And it's often what's holding us back. And so they're trained to help you to see that, to bring it to your attention, to bring it lovingly, to bring it out, expose it, blow it out of your life, so that you can have a life that's freer and more powerful than ever before. I have a practitioner that I work with on a regular basis, on a monthly basis. Okay? Even as a minister, especially as a minister. Mary nods her head, yeah. I need that support. Not only do I have a practitioner, I have a couple of prayer partners that I work with also. Get support. There's this whole myth that we have to do it ourselves and do it all alone. No, you don't. In fact, it doesn't work. Most of those great successful people had support. C.S. Lewis, who wrote the Chronicles of Narnia, and J.R.R. Tolkien, who wrote the Lord of the Rings trilogy, you might have heard of those little books, were in the same writers group together called the Inklings. The Impressionist painters, they were pretty much vilified during your time. Nowadays, we worship them. They think, they go for, gobs and gobs of money from, whenever they're put on auction. But in their day, they were vilified. Oh, that's not real painting. Who do you guys think you are? What is that? You're destroying art. And so they worked together. They met together. They taught together. They were friends with each other. All this idea that we the Lone Ranger who creates by themselves is really a myth. You don't have to follow that myth. In fact, I encourage you not to follow the myth. Get a prayer partner. Use a practitioner. Use the prayer box. Get some support, because that will blow you out of your story. So this week, what I invite you to do is to take a look in your consciousness of what you've judged as a failure. And I want to say not only for yourself, but for anybody else. How many of you, like me, have a child who's a failure? Nobody's going to admit it. And I don't either, by the way. But once in a while, that thought has crossed my mind. This is not the older daughter. This is the one you haven't ever met. We don't get along too well. And I could also judge myself as a failure as a parent in her case, and I have. What I know is some methods that don't work in us having a bonded relationship. I know lots of methods that don't work in us having a bonded relationship. But find out where in your consciousness you're holding the idea of failure, either for yourself or someone else. Because if you're holding it about somebody else, and there's only one of us, guess what? Guess who you're judging as a failure? Yourself, in some aspect of yourself. That person who you judge as a failure is an aspect of yourself. Take a breath. So bring that to your attention. Just find out where it is, if it is, that you're holding that anywhere in your consciousness. And then be willing to change your thinking about it. Be willing to reverse your thinking about that. Be willing to dissolve the idea of failure. Now, you may not like the way they're doing something. That's okay. But do you judge them or yourself as a failure? Be willing to reverse that thought. Be willing to clear the atmosphere so that you can be open to the flow of the infinite. Number 3, remember what your overall intention was. What is it that I really wanted when I felt like I failed at that point? What did I really want? And am I free to still manifest that? And the answer, by the way, is? Yes, you are. I don't care how long ago it was. You're still free to manifest the core intention that you wanted from that. You may have even met that intention in some other way, and you're still holding on to the fact that this one method back here didn't work out, and you're still unhappy. You're still feeling like a failure because of that. Meanwhile, you've met the intention anyways. And then finally, get support. I think I probably hammered on that one enough, didn't I? Get some support. Get help. Let somebody else join with your vision. And the one thing I'll say with support is don't go out to somebody who will trash your dream. We all know people like that. That's not support. Okay? You go to somebody who will hold you in the highest light, who will recognize that you are God in form, and will love you and support you in that dream. Okay? So can you do that this week? We're going to let go of the idea of failure. We're going to recognize that what we've called a setback is setting us up for a greater good. Are you willing to receive your good? Great. Let's pray. I'm going to invite Holly up to play a little bit of music underneath the prayer, and then we're going to go into hers, another wonderful song from her. So taking a deep breath, opening to that infinite presence, the infinite symphony of the universe, playing through all this myriad of instruments. The beautiful love, the joy, the abundance, the creativity, the life energy, the vitality of the infinite. We open to that. We recognize that that is all that there is. That infinite presence is all there is. There is nothing else but that. It is beyond our imagination of how good it is. The love of that is beyond our imagination. Every mystic who's ever touched it has had the experience of a love that is beyond conception. It's been called the peace that is beyond understanding. That is all that there is. And then we recognize that because it's all that there is, we have to be one of it. There's nowhere else to be. And so we are one with that symphony. We are one with that love. We are one with that joy. We are one of that abundance. We are one with that life energy, that vibrant aliveness. We, you, each of us, we are one of it. We don't have to earn it. We don't have to do something to make that happen. We are, right this second, it. We always have been, we always will be, and we are right now. Whether we remember it and know how to enact that or not, we are that. Breathe that in. And it's from that awareness that I speak my word. That each of us knows, that each of us gets it at the deepest, most beautiful, most powerful level possible. How God we are. How good we are. We drop any judgments and ideas of failure from our consciousness. We have never failed. We get to have preferences for how things turned out, but we have never, ever, ever failed. And so that consciousness, that idea, that word drops from our consciousness, drops from our vocabulary, drops from our experience, and we stand fresh and naked in the beautiful light of the day, of the divine presence, and we say yes to that. We recognize our innocence, we recognize our goodness, we recognize the bliss and the beauty of who we truly are. The divine in full expression on this planet playing in human form. That is who we truly are. And so we allow our creativity, we allow our love, we allow our magnificence to shine through, to express powerfully, clearly. We don't hold back anymore. We don't worry about how other people might judge us. We stand in and are and express as the power and divine nature that we are, the God that we are. We say yes to that on the most powerful level in a greater way than we have ever said yes before. And for the good that manifests from this, for the outstanding expression, the manifestations, the aliveness that expresses from that, I am grateful. For each person here who is saying yes, for each person who watches this video who says yes, for each person who even feels this somewhere in the vibratory consciousness of this world and this universe who says yes to this idea, I am grateful. For the presence and the spirit within and through it all, I am grateful. And for all the good and all the outstanding expression that comes from this, I am so grateful. And I call it all good. We release the how it shows up into the place that has the how already covered. We call it the law, we call it the infinite, whatever you call it, it is that which knows how. We don't have to figure it out. We simply say, I choose to be God today, and the infinite universe says, and I know exactly how to do that as you. And so we let it do it, we let it be, we let it bless us in the most powerful way, beautiful way possible. We say yes, yay, amen, yippee skippy, and so it is. Thank you.